And welcome to the Headless Commerce webinar. This webinar comes to you from Kibo, the leading headless commerce platform, also Contentful, the leading headless content platform, and Ignitiv. Ignitiv is an agency that focuses on the end-to-end headless commerce solutions built with both Kibo and Contentful. The focus of this webinar is the execution of a headless commerce strategy. But first, before we begin, I'd like to introduce our panel of speakers today. I'm Ron Moss. I'm responsible for business development here at Ignitiv. With us from Kibo is Blake Billings. Blake's part of the solution engineering team. And also Nick Switzer. Nick is with the solution engineering at Contentful. Rajib Das, he's head of our strategy here at Ignitiv, and also Deepak Prabhu, head of technology. So our agenda for this webinar, we separated this presentation into three sections: business context, technology context, and implementation. In the business context, we lay out the business parameters around which you can maximize returns on your headless commerce strategy. Then we move into the technology context. We address the primary technology issues and how to use headless commerce and content platforms as part of an overall headless commerce solution. We also demonstrate how a headless commerce solution addresses the business challenges that we've outlined in the business context part of our presentation. Finally, in the implementation context, we get into the nitty-gritty of the solution implementation. We discuss methodology, sprint mapping, phased versus big bang approach, schedule, and even team roles. So let's start with business context. Rajib, over to you.
Okay. So what is headless commerce? With the goal of keeping the use of jargon to a minimum, here is an operating definition. As the term suggests, headless commerce is a modern architecture that decouples the front end from the back end. In that sense, for many with legacy platforms, the big change will be a front-end app that is distinct from your commerce platform. And it uses API services from your commerce application and other applications to compose those apps. This means you can create experiences for your customers on the front end as you want without necessarily impacting the back end. It's a big architectural change that brings significant impact for many organizations.
So Kibo, Contentful, follow-on question. Is there anything you would like to add to this basic definition?
Go ahead, Blake.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, sometimes the number of webinars we've all been on that start with a definition of headless, right? So I think the easiest way to define it for me, or at least conceptually understand it, is to kind of talk about what it's not, right? So I think in the commerce space specifically, folks are used to purchasing an e-commerce platform that comes with the content management aspect to it. So when I buy a commerce platform, I also have a system, a page editor, a site editor, a page builder, whatever you want to call it, where I go create content. I manage the pages of my e-commerce platform. A headless is just a decoupling, pulling that head, the content aspect, off of the commerce aspect. And obviously there's broader implications, but I think in its most simplistic form, that's the easiest way. So the content now can be managed by the content team across all of the digital touch points. Maybe it's not just the web now, maybe it's an app or some other channel. And the commerce, the products, the pricing, the promotions, the cart, the checkout can be managed by the commerce team. So it's the decoupling of this content and the commerce aspects.
Yeah, I like that. And I'd add to that, just something we're hearing a lot more of lately is the term composable. Like, you might hear composable commerce or composable architecture in place of headless. And, that really they're interchangeable, but I like that this really encapsulates a lot of the same ideas, in the definition and the things that Blake mentioned, but it reinforces the idea that a business can use this style of architecture to compose the exact experience that they need to effectively scale and grow while creating a really good experience for their customers, the end users, but also creating a really good experience for the people actually creating the content.
Okay, so let's move forward to why headless commerce. Why should an organization implement a headless commerce strategy? We, on our side, have mapped the benefits of a headless commerce strategy into 5 areas: unique customer experiences, content agility, site performance, scalability, and new touch points. Because the front end is not tied to the back end, you get freedom from the constraints of templates that many monolithic platforms would enforce. You can reflect exactly what your design team comes up with. In the process, better and differentiated customer experiences that are created can lead to higher customer satisfaction. And that in turn would mean they recognize your brand, buy both more and more times. A recent e-consultancy report found that 64% of the companies rate customer experience as the best tactic for improving customer lifetime value. Moving into content agility. One of the big benefits of a headless strategy is to incorporate a content platform as a part of the overall solution. When that is done, a large number of marketing changes can be done far more quickly without the need for the development team and the development process to be involved. We all know more content refreshes mean more customer engagement, and more customer engagement in turn means more conversions. As an example, Amazon pushes updates to their site every 11.7 seconds on an average. With the right front-end architecture, such as with progressive web applications, you build caching and offline capabilities into the front end. What that does is improve speed dramatically. Research shows that improved speeds lead to a better SEO ranking, more traffic, and better conversions. As an example, Yahoo reduced its speed by 0.4 seconds and improved traffic by 9%. Because the front end is its own component, it can scale independent of the back-end applications. For high traffic moments, such as during the holiday season, you build scalability into the front-end architecture. You can ensure less downtime and the prospect of lost sales during the downtime. Those lost sales could be hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. For example, Amazon's 2018 issues on Prime Day surge cost them more than $1 million per minute of downtime. Finally, on to new touch points. To create new touch points quickly and cheaply is extremely important. With headless architecture, a new touch point such as a mobile app is easy to build. The front end for the new touch point is built using its own framework, and it involves services using APIs just like you did for your desktop or mobile front end. With legacy platforms, it would have meant going through multiple hoops with possibly more constraints added. Dollar savings in building such a touch point, such new touch points could be significant. So I'll just pause here for a minute and ask Nick the question on some examples of how content agility has improved overall e-commerce or sites business performance.
Yeah, definitely. It's something we see often. I think, one use case that comes to mind for me is one of our customers that they're a large high-end consumer electronics company, and they were moving to a composable, or headless, like we talked about earlier, architecture. And, they were stuck in a monolithic suite, and they had a really closely coupled commerce and content management operation. And it made pushing out experiences that went to a number of different channels, things like in-store displays, websites, mobile apps. It made that really difficult and time consuming and slow and painful for the people actually doing that. And so they moved to a microservices based tech stack like we're talking about here. And they built a really tightly integrated experience for their creators and also for their customers. Prior to this move, they had an experience that was like a separate site for viewing products and a separate site for checking out that just made for a really fragmented customer journey. And as a result of moving to that new experience, they saw improvements that hit on almost all of the areas you're talking about. I think the three that always stand out for me are 60% increase in conversion rate, 27% increase in average order value, and 5 times faster load times than what they were experiencing before. So, you know, it made a real difference for them, and they were able to do it really, really quickly.
Fantastic. Blake, let me turn to you. So with the clients that you've worked with, what kind of differentiated customers you've seen lead to much better conversions than they had before?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One that specifically comes to mind is actually a furniture retailer customer that we've worked with. And they were looking at the time, they had their own CMS that they had been using for some time. They were happy with it. They had built their own custom React storefront on top of it. And they had a highly complex product management system, and they wanted to keep that in place. Like I said, they were furniture, so just complex products and connections. But they were looking for a new cart and checkout. They were on an older version of Magento. They were ready to move off of that. And so, they were looking for everything from when you hit add to cart on the PDP to when you submit the checkout. And so, they looked at a variety of different headless commerce platforms, those who shall not be named. And, what they found was, they were able, because of our platform, they were able to actually cut the time. They timed it before and after. How long it took when you hit add to cart to get to checkout on their old site versus the new site with the backend system. And it was actually, I think it was like 2 minutes, or maybe actually think 61 seconds versus 30 seconds to get from the add to cart to the checkout experience. And so obviously that site performance yielded a huge increase in revenue and conversion rate on the site, as they were able to, keep a lot of customers that would be dropping off that journey otherwise.
Great. So let's now move to creating or calculating return on investment. If or where your team needs to build out a business case for executive approval of budgets within your organization, you could use the benefits we've outlined in the last slide to build out an ROI model. In the cost column, you will have both one-time implementation and ongoing cloud services or hosting costs. For the one-time implementation costs, your cost would involve building out the front-end implementation and integrating it to back-end third-party APIs. If you're incorporating a headless content platform as a part of the solution, you have to account for the cost of configuring and integrating the content platform as well. And for ongoing costs, you would need to worry about the hosting and management of the front-end app that you or your SI partner will manage. And on the top of that, the cloud services cost associated with the new content platform, if you do bring that in. Besides, on an ongoing basis, the nature of your development team will change. Earlier, you had front-end capabilities of the monolithic platform. That will be replaced by your headless app developers and content platform specialists. Because of the introduction of a headless content platform, you'll also see manpower cost savings in your content operations. Now, on the positive side, you should expect an increase in your site traffic because of better site speed, better SEO ranking, scalability, and the addition of new touch points. With differentiated customer experiences and faster content changes, combined with better site performance, you will see a jump in the conversion rates as well. And as all of this improves brand strength, customers will buy more per order and come back to order more times, properly mapped. Essentially, what that means is that your average order value and customer lifetime value will trend higher. And finally, in terms of lost sales because of downtime, you can fall back on your historical experience and map the savings in terms of lost opportunities. So let me pause there and ask both Blake and Nick, what kind of a ROI should clients be expecting from a transition to headless commerce?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a loaded question, right? Big ROI, right? That's the answer we all want to hear. But I think realistically, the one of the huge benefits of this headless, or probably more prominent and important, composable approach, is that rather than going through a large project and trying to recognize an ROI, you can break it down into much more, I guess, bite-sized pieces, right? So when you think about an ROI, every organization at some level would like to have an ROI, or has an ROI, or asks the vendor or the SI for an ROI for this project, right? But the challenge of that is, if you're doing this big bang approach, so much is changing at once, right? If you rip out your old e-commerce platform and bring in a new commerce system with a different search and a different content management system with a completely different front end, calculating that ROI is extremely complex.
Yeah.
But the benefit of composable commerce even is that you can do it in a piece-by-piece approach. And so instead of having to do this whole thing over 9 to 12 months and try to recognize an ROI, and even more complicated, identify what caused that ROI, you can go piece by piece. And so you can find your biggest pain points, or what you find to be your biggest opportunity, and just start there and yield the ROI for that. And so you break it into smaller pieces where it's much easier to track the ROI, and it's actually much easier to convince the organization to continue a project, or to start a project if it's a 6-week project that's going to cost $100,000, and if it's a 12-month project that's going to cost $1.5 million, right? So a great example of this, I know, Rajib, your team actually worked on this, a customer of ours who was looking for a new e-commerce platform, which is great. They were going to move off their old one, but they had a really pressing issue of PCI compliance on their current platform. And so what they were able to do was, they planned on getting a whole new e-commerce platform, but actually from the time of signature, within 6 weeks, we had them live on a new payment service to go through cart and checkout, so that they were now under PCI compliance, right? So they were able to solve their biggest problem first in a very short period of time, instead of saying, hey, we're going out of PCI compliance, let's do this 9-month project to get on a new commerce platform. So now they've gone live with other aspects of the commerce, and now they're rolling out different components. So they're able to recognize value in an iterative approach, rather than just trying to calculate ROI for this giant project to replace multiple different systems.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. You know, I mean, I think, like you said, we wanted to just be able to give the simple answer. Like you get big ROI, right? Like it's always going to be good. And you know, I know we all certainly have case studies. I'm sure some shared case studies even, where we can point to some really compelling metrics around this stuff. So like that exists, but I think the context that you layer on top of that around how you approach that ROI is really an important piece of this, right? Because like we're talking here about just like, not just a site rebuild, not just like a redesign, not rewriting some content. We're talking about a whole paradigm shift in the way like your organization operates and manages technology, you know, that if done properly can really enable an organization to be much more agile and to push out changes much more quickly than they traditionally have. So, you know, a lot of times it's just that businesses don't even know that this is possible, or that they can think in these terms. So, you know, I think that's a conversation that is really important for us all, you know, to have as we're onboarding, you know, new members into our, you know, microservices, technology, composable, like headless community, whatever we want to call it, you know, to help them understand that like you will get ROI, but like speed and iteration is a really big part of that calculation, because like you're going to be able to prove that value sooner to more stakeholders, and you're going to be able to break these problems down into smaller, easier to tackle chunks to allow you to, you know, maybe you don't see the same ROI the first time around, but you see more ROI and you see it more quickly, and you're able to impact things that touch a lot more parts of your organization. So, you know, just more people are satisfied with the approach and the transition.